On a grey afternoon, with the asphalt still wet, a crowd packs into a narrow street downtown. Among them, a German shepherd puppy is relentlessly kicked, rolling between feet like trash. Not fighting back, the pup tries to hide by the curb, but each whimper only makes the abuse worse. Amid the shouts, a 2-year-old child slips away from his mother and walks straight to the dog. With slow steps, he kneels and wraps the puppy in an unexplainable hug. No one moves, not a sound. The crowd stares as if they no longer know what to do, and for 1 second, everything stops. Love animal stories? Then subscribe now and don't miss a thing. Thanks for following along. Now, back to our story. The bustling streets of Portland, Oregon were alive with the sounds of traffic and hurried conversations on that crisp autumn morning. Leaves in vibrant shades of orange and red danced along the sidewalks as pedestrians rushed to their destinations, most of them too preoccupied with their own thoughts to notice the small drama unfolding in a corner of Pioneer Square. Emma Wilson, a 32-year-old single mother with kind eyes and perpetually tired shoulders, was juggling her grocery bags while trying to keep an eye on her spirited 2-year-old son, Ethan. The boy had his mother's expressive hazel eyes and a mop of unruly brown curls that seemed to have a mind of their own. Emma had just picked up some essentials from the farmer's market before heading to her shift at the local diner where she worked as a waitress. "Ethan, stay close, honey," Emma called out, adjusting the weight of her bags. For a moment, her attention was diverted by a text message from her boss asking if she could come in an hour early. That brief distraction was all it took. When Emma looked up again, her heart nearly stopped. Ethan was no longer beside her. Panic gripped her chest as her eyes frantically scanned the crowded square. Then she heard it. Cruel laughter coming from a small group gathered near the fountain. Between the legs of the onlookers, she caught a glimpse of her son's bright blue jacket moving toward the commotion. What Emma saw next made her blood run cold. A group of teenagers had cornered a small German shepherd puppy against the stone edge of the fountain. The frightened animal, no more than a few months old, cowered and whimpered as the boys took turns nudging it with their feet and laughing at its distress. The puppy's large, soulful eyes were wide with fear, its small body trembling as it tried to make itself even smaller. "Hey, stop that!" Emma shouted, but her voice was lost in the general noise of the square. Several passers-by glanced at the scene, frowned in disapproval, but continued walking. The indifference was almost as disturbing as the cruelty itself. Before Emma could reach the group, something unexpected happened. Little Ethan, who had slipped from his mother's grasp, toddled straight through the circle of teenagers. With the fearlessness that only a child too young to understand danger could possess, he pushed his way between two of the boys and dropped to his knees beside the terrified puppy. The square seemed to hold its breath as the small boy, barely steady on his feet when walking, wrapped his arms around the trembling puppy. The contrast was striking, the innocent child embracing the frightened animal, offering protection with his tiny body. "No hurt, doggy," Ethan said firmly, his childish voice carrying a conviction that silenced everyone around him. His small arms tightened around the puppy, who stopped trembling for a moment, surprised by this unexpected alliance. The teenagers froze, suddenly confronted with the reality of their actions through the eyes of a toddler. The ringleader, a lanky boy named Tyler with a Patriots cap pulled low over his eyes, took a step back, his smirk fading. Emma finally broke through the crowd, her heart pounding with fear and a strange kind of pride. "Ethan," she called out, dropping her groceries as she rushed to her son. But when she reached the fountain, the scene before her was so powerful that she stopped in her tracks. Her little boy, her baby, was staring up at these teenagers with an expression of such pure disappointment that even she felt chastened by it. "Doggy sad," Ethan declared, patting the puppy's head gently. The animal had stopped cowering and was now pressing closer to the child, as if recognizing a kindred spirit. A man named Jack Reynolds, who had been sketching the fountain for his architecture blog, had witnessed the entire scene. Without thinking, he pulled out his phone and captured the moment. The small boy with his arms around the puppy, the circle of teenagers frozen in various states of shame, and Emma standing at the edge, her face a canvas of emotions. "Is this your son, Jack?" asked Emma, his voice soft with wonder. Emma nodded, unable to speak through the lump in her throat. She kneeled beside Ethan, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "I think someone needs to teach these kids a lesson about kindness," Jack said, his eyes narrowing at the teenagers who were now shuffling uncomfortably. Tyler, the apparent leader of the group, looked down at his sneakers. "We weren't really going to hurt it," he mumbled, but the excuse sounded hollow even to his own ears. "What you were doing was cruel," Emma said firmly, finding her voice at last. "This puppy was scared and defenseless. How would you feel if someone treated you that way?" The square had grown quiet, with more people stopping to observe the confrontation. Among them was Dr. Olivia Martinez, a local veterinarian who had been on her way to her clinic. "Is the puppy injured?" she asked, stepping forward and identifying herself. Emma looked at the German Shepherd pup more closely. It didn't appear to be physically hurt, but its fear was palpable. "I don't think so, but he's terrified." Dr. Martinez kneeled down, careful not to startle the animal. "Hey there, little one," she said softly, extending her hand for the puppy to sniff. The puppy remained pressed against Ethan, but cautiously stretched its nose toward the veterinarian. "He doesn't have a collar," Dr. Martinez observed. "Probably a stray or abandoned. There's been an increase in abandoned pets since the economic downturn." Emma felt a tug on her sleeve. "Doggy come home?" Ethan asked, his eyes wide and hopeful. The puppy looked up too, as if understanding the question, its ears perking up slightly. Emma hesitated. Their small apartment barely had enough space for the two of them, and pets weren't technically allowed. She worked long hours at the diner, and her budget was already stretched thin. Taking in a puppy would mean more expenses, more responsibility, more complications. But looking at her son's face, and then at the puppy, who seemed to have found its first moment of security in Ethan's arms, Emma knew there was only one answer she could give. "Yes, honey. Doggy can come home with us," she said, making a decision that would change their lives in ways she couldn't yet imagine. Tyler cleared his throat. We're sorry," he said, gesturing to his friends, who nodded in awkward agreement. "We didn't think—" "That's the problem, isn't it?" Emma said, not unkindly. "Sometimes we forget to think about how our actions affect others, especially those who can't speak for themselves." Jack, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. "I'm a photographer. Well, amateur photographer. I hope you don't mind, but I took a picture of your son with the puppy. It was such a powerful moment." Emma was about to object when Dr. Martinez interjected. "Actually, that might be a good idea. This kind of story, a child showing more compassion than the adults around him, it's something people need to see." "I agree," said a woman who had been watching from nearby. She introduced herself as Rebecca Harper, a reporter for the local newspaper. "Would you be willing to share this story? It might help raise awareness about animal cruelty and abandonment." Emma looked down at Ethan, who was now giggling as the puppy licked his face, all signs of fear gone from the animal's demeanor. Something about the scene touched a deep chord within her. Perhaps sharing this moment could indeed make a difference. "All right," she agreed hesitantly, "but please, nothing that would identify Ethan too specifically. I'm protective of his privacy." As the small crowd began to disperse, Emma gathered her scattered groceries with the help of Jack and Dr. Martinez. The puppy, seemingly unwilling to leave Ethan's side, followed them closely. "What are you going to name him?" Jack asked, handing Emma the last of her apples. Ethan, who had been listening intently, patted the puppy's head and declared with the certainty only a toddler could muster, "Max! His name, Max!" Emma smiled, watching as the newly christened Max wagged his tail for the first time since they'd encountered him. "Max it is," she agreed, wondering what her landlord would say about their new family member. Dr. Martinez offered to give Max a free checkup at her clinic. "I can also provide some starter supplies, food, a collar, basic medications. It's the least I can do." As they walked away from Pioneer Square, Emma couldn't help but feel that something significant had just occurred, something beyond the simple rescue of a stray puppy. Her son had shown more courage and compassion in his innocent action than many adults did in a lifetime of deliberate choices. What none of them realized as they parted ways was that Jack's photograph would soon travel far beyond their small corner of Portland, touching hearts and igniting a movement that would ripple through the community in unexpected ways. For now, though, Emma was simply focused on getting home and figuring out how to smuggle a German Shepherd puppy into a no-pets apartment building. Tyler and his friends remained at the fountain long after the others had gone, their usual afternoon plans forgotten as they grappled with the uncomfortable feeling of being schooled in kindness by a toddler. The seed of change had been planted in their young minds as well, though it would take time to fully blossom. Jack Reynolds sat in his modest studio apartment that evening, scrolling through the photographs he had taken that day. As a freelance architectural photographer struggling to make ends meet, his usual subjects were buildings and urban landscapes, not emotional human moments. But the image of little Ethan embracing the frightened German Shepherd puppy had captured something so pure and powerful that Jack couldn't stop staring at it. The composition was almost Renaissance-like. The small boy with his protective embrace, the grateful eyes of the puppy, the circle of teenagers caught between aggression and shame, and Emma's expression of maternal pride mixed with concern. It told a story without requiring a single word of explanation. "This deserves to be seen," Jack murmured to himself, opening his rarely used social media accounts. With a moment's hesitation, he posted the photograph with a simple caption. "Today, in Pioneer Square, a 2-year-old boy showed us all what compassion looks like." The next morning, Emma struggled to smuggle Max into her apartment building. Mrs. Grayson, the elderly landlady, with a strict no-pets policy and seemingly superhuman hearing, was thankfully at her weekly bridge game. Emma had spent most of the night creating a makeshift bed for Max from old blankets, feeding him with leftover chicken from her dinner, and watching in wonder as Ethan and the puppy formed an immediate bond. "Remember, Ethan, we have to be very quiet with Max," Emma whispered as they climbed the stairs to their third-floor apartment. "It's our little secret for now." Ethan nodded solemnly, placing a finger against his lips in an exaggerated gesture of secrecy that made Emma smile despite her anxiety. Max seemed to understand the need for stealth as well, padding quietly beside them with only the occasional soft jingle from the temporary collar Dr. Martinez had provided. Once safely inside their apartment, Emma dropped her purse on the counter and noticed her phone blinking with notifications. Assuming it was her boss asking her to pick up another shift, she ignored it and focused on settling Max and Ethan. She had called in sick to work today, something she rarely did, knowing she needed time to figure out their new situation. Across our town, in a sleek downtown office with floor-to-ceiling windows, Ryan Anderson scrolled through his social media feed during a coffee break. As the marketing director for Northwest Animal Alliance, the largest animal welfare organization in Oregon, Ryan was always on the lookout for compelling content to share with their followers. When Jack's photograph appeared on his screen, he nearly spilled his artisanal cold brew. "Melissa, come look at this," he called to his assistant. "This is exactly what we've been trying to communicate in our campaign." Melissa leaned over his shoulder, her expression softening as she took in the image. "Wow, that's powerful. Do you know who took it?" Ryan clicked through to Jack's profile. Some local photographer, not a big account, but this photo, he shook his head in admiration. "This is something special." Without hesitation, Ryan shared the photograph on the Northwest Animal Alliance's official page, giving credit to Jack and adding a heartfelt message about the wisdom of children and the organization's mission to protect vulnerable animals. With over 500,000 followers, the post began to gain traction immediately. By midday, Emma's phone was buzzing constantly. Confused, she finally checked it to find dozens of messages from friends, co-workers, and even people she hadn't spoken to in years. All of them contained screenshots of Jack's photograph, which had apparently gone viral overnight. "Oh my God," Emma whispered, sinking onto her worn sofa as she scrolled through the notifications. The photograph had been shared thousands of times, picked up by several local news outlets, and was now trending under hashtags like Compassion Lessons and Portland Puppy. Her first instinct was panic. She'd been careful to protect Ethan's privacy, and now his face was everywhere. But as she read the comments, her anxiety began to shift. People weren't focusing on identifying Ethan. They were talking about what his action represented. The pure, instinctive kindness of a child contrasted with the casual cruelty of the teenagers, and the indifference of the adult bystanders had struck a deep chord. Emma's phone rang, displaying an unknown number. Hesitantly, she answered. "Is this Emma Wilson?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, who's calling?" "This is Rebecca Harper from the Portland Chronicle. We spoke briefly yesterday at Pioneer Square. I'm calling because that photograph of your son has gone viral, and we'd like to do a feature story. People are really connecting with this moment." Emma hesitated, watching, as Ethan built a fort of pillows for Max in the living room. The puppy was already looking healthier after a night of care, his coat less dull and his eyes brighter. "I'm not sure how I feel about more publicity," she admitted. "I understand your concern," Rebecca said, "but this could be an opportunity to raise awareness about animal welfare. Your son did something extraordinary, and it's resonating with people in a powerful way." Before Emma could respond, her call waiting beeped. "Can I call you back?" "I have another call." The second caller was Ryan Anderson from Northwest Animal Alliance, eager to discuss how Ethan's spontaneous act of kindness aligned perfectly with their upcoming campaign against animal cruelty. "We'd like to make your son and Max the faces of our initiative, with your permission, of course," Ryan explained, his enthusiasm evident. "We can arrange for all of Max's veterinary care, training, and supplies to be covered by our organization." Emma's head was spinning. Yesterday, she had been a struggling single mother worried about making rent. Today, she was fielding calls from media outlets and non-profit organizations, and all because her son had followed his heart and done what and came naturally to him, showing kindness to a creature in need. As Emma tried to process these developments, there was a knock at her door. Warily, she approached and looked through the peephole to see Jack Reynolds standing in the hallway, looking nervous. "Jack," she said, opening the door, "how did you find where I live?" Jack had the grace to look embarrassed. "Dr. Martinez gave me your address. I hope that's okay. I wanted to talk to you about the photograph. It's kind of blown up." Emma gave a short laugh. "Yeah, I noticed. My phone hasn't stopped buzzing." Jack ran a hand through his already disheveled hair. "I'm so sorry if I've caused you any trouble." I should have asked for your permission before posting it online. It was such a powerful moment. And I thought, it's okay, Emma interrupted, surprising herself with the realization that she meant it. Come in. We should talk about this. In Emma's living room, Ethan was delighted to see Jack again, proudly showing him how Max could already sit on command, a trick they had been practicing all morning. Jack marveled at the bond that had formed so quickly between the boy and the dog. They're inseparable already, Emma said, watching them with a mixture of joy and worry, which is going to make things complicated when Mrs. Grayson finds out about our furry stowaway. Jack's expression turned serious. That's partly why I came. The photo is getting a lot of attention, and I've received several offers to license it. I want to split any money it makes with you. It might help with, finding a pet-friendly place, if it comes to that. Emma started to refuse, but the practical part of her brain, the part that stayed up nights worrying about bills, made her reconsider. That's very generous of you. It's not generosity, it's your story as much as mine, Jack insisted. And there's something else. The Northwest Animal Alliance reached out to me. They want to use the photo in their new campaign. Emma nodded. Ryan Anderson just called me about that. They're serious players in animal welfare around here, Jack said. This could turn into something meaningful beyond just a viral moment. As they spoke, Emma's phone rang again. This time, it was her landlady, Mrs. Grayson. With a grimace, Emma answered, already preparing her defense. Emma Wilson. Mrs. Grayson's voice was sharp with accusation. I've just received several calls informing me that you're harboring a dog in your apartment. You know the rules. Emma closed her eyes, trying to remain calm. Mrs. Grayson, I can explain. Is it true that your son rescued this animal from abuse? The older woman interrupted, her tone softening slightly. Taken aback by the question, Emma answered truthfully. Yes, he did. There was a pause, then a sigh. My late husband always said we should have had a dog. I never allowed it. Too messy. Too noisy. Another pause. Perhaps I've been too rigid. The other tenants have started a petition to make an exception in your case. Apparently your son is some kind of local hero now. Emma could hardly believe what she was hearing. Are you saying we can keep Max? On a trial basis, Mrs. Grayson clarified, though her voice had lost its edge. And I expect no noise complaints and no damage to the property, and the animal must be properly trained. Of course, absolutely, Emma agreed quickly. Thank you, Mrs. Grayson. After hanging up, Emma turned to Jack with wide eyes. She's letting us keep him. I can't believe it. Jack smiled. The power of public opinion. And speaking of which, what do you want to do about all these media requests and the Northwest Animal Alliance? Offer. Emma watched Ethan and Max playing together, her son's laughter filling the small apartment with a joy that had been too rare in their lives. Something was shifting inside her, a recognition that perhaps this unexpected moment of viral fame could be channeled into something meaningful. Let's talk to them, she decided. Not for fame or attention, but because maybe Ethan's simple act of kindness could inspire something larger. If sharing our story helps other animals like Max, then it's worth doing. Jack nodded in agreement. I think you're right, and I'll be there to help navigate this if you want. I've done some PR work in the past before I focused on architecture, photography. As they sat discussing the possibilities, Emma's phone buzzed with a text message from Dr. Martinez. Saw the viral photo. Max's checkup results are all good. Slight malnourishment, but no serious health issues. He's a lucky puppy. P.S. Several clients have asked how they can help other strays like him. You've started something special. In another part of town, Tyler Matthews sat on the edge of his bed staring at his phone. The viral photograph had spread through his school like wildfire, and though his face wasn't clearly visible, several of his friends had recognized him. Instead of the shame he had expected, he felt a strange sense of purpose forming. He had spent the night researching animal shelters and rescue organizations, something that would have been unthinkable just days ago. With a deep breath, Tyler opened a new message to his friends who had been with him at the fountain. Meet me at the animal shelter on Burnside tomorrow after school, he typed. I think we should volunteer. That kid showed us up, and I want to make it right. One by one, replies came in, all affirmative. The ripple effect of Ethan's spontaneous embrace was already reaching further than anyone could have predicted. 3 weeks after the incident at Pioneer Square, Emma sat in the sleek conference room of the Northwest Animal Alliance headquarters, still trying to process how dramatically her life had changed. Across from her, Ryan Anderson was animatedly explaining the details of their new campaign. Compassion starts small. The response has been unprecedented, Ryan said, sliding a tablet across the table to show Emma the metrics. Jack's photograph has been shared over 2 million times globally. We've received donations from all 50 states and 12 countries. People are connecting with this story in a profound way. Emma studied the screen, still finding it surreal that her son's spontaneous act had resonated with so many. It's overwhelming, she admitted. Ethan doesn't even understand what's happening. To him, he just helped a doggy who looked sad. Ryan smiled. That's exactly why it's so powerful. The purity of a child's compassion, no agenda, no hesitation, just pure empathy. We've been trying to convey that message for years, and your son did it in one moment. The door opened, and Jack entered with his camera bag slung over his shoulder. In the weeks since the photo went viral, he had transitioned from architectural photography to working with the Alliance, documenting animal rescue stories and shelter conditions. The licensing fees from his now famous photograph had provided him with financial stability for the first time in years, allowing him to focus on work he found meaningful. Sorry I'm late, Jack said, taking a seat beside Emma. I was at the county shelter with Tyler and his friends. Those kids are really stepping up. Emma still found it hard to believe that the teenagers who had been tormenting Max were now dedicated volunteers at the local animal shelter. Tyler, in particular, had undergone a remarkable transformation, organizing a group of high school students to help walk dogs, clean kennels, and assist with adoption events. How are they doing? She asked. Amazing, Jack replied. Tyler's been talking to the shelter manager about starting a program where at-risk teens work with rescue animals, something about mutual rehabilitation. Ryan nodded approvingly. That's exactly the kind of community initiative we want to highlight in the campaign. Speaking of which, Emma, have you had a chance to think about our proposal? Emma fidgeted with her coffee cup. The Alliance had offered her a part-time position as a community outreach coordinator, allowing her flexible hours to accommodate her role as a single mother, while providing much better pay than her waitressing job. They were particularly interested in her ability to connect with ordinary people, to translate the technical aspects of animal welfare into relatable terms. I'm still not sure I'm qualified, she admitted. I don't have any background in non-profit work or animal welfare policy. You have something more valuable, Ryan countered. Authenticity. People trust you because they've seen the genuine. Where you and Ethan responded to Max, that can't be manufactured or taught. Jack reached over and gave Emma's hand a supportive squeeze. Over the past weeks, they had grown close, bonding over their shared journey into unexpected advocacy. You're selling yourself short, Emma. You've already done more for this cause than most people do in a lifetime. Emma thought about the changes in her own life. Thanks to the licensing fees from Jack's photograph and a fundraiser organized by the Alliance's supporters, she and Ethan had moved into a pet-friendly duplex with a small yard where Max could play. The German Shepherd puppy was growing rapidly, already showing signs of the handsome adult dog he would become. More importantly, he had become an essential part of their family. His presence filling a void Emma hadn't even realized existed. "All right," she said finally. "I'll do it, but I want to make sure this campaign remains focused on the real issues, not just on Ethan and Max." Ryan looked relieved. "Absolutely. While their story is what caught people's attention, our goal is to channel that emotional response into sustained action. Speaking of which, the city council meeting is tomorrow. Are you ready?" Emma took a deep breath. "As ready as I'll ever be." The next afternoon, Portland City Hall was packed with community members, media representatives, and animal welfare advocates. At the heart of the discussion was a proposed ordinance to strengthen animal protection laws, increase funding for the county shelter, and implement a comprehensive education program in schools about responsible pet ownership and animal welfare. Emma sat in the front row with Ethan on her lap, and Max, now sporting a service dog in training vest that allowed him entry to the building, sitting obediently at her feet. Jack was positioned near the wall, his camera capturing the proceedings for the Alliance's documentation. When it was Emma's turn to speak, she approached the podium with Ethan's hand firmly in hers. Looking out at the sea of faces, she was momentarily paralyzed by nervousness. Then she felt Ethan squeeze her hand, and her focus returned. "My name is Emma Wilson," she began, her voice gaining strength with each word. "A month ago, my son Ethan and I were just ordinary Portland residents trying to make ends meet. We didn't have any special connection to animal welfare issues. We weren't activists or advocates. We were just people going about our day." She glanced down at Ethan, who was looking up at her with trusting eyes. But that changed when Ethan saw a puppy in distress and did what came naturally to him. He offered comfort and protection to a vulnerable creature. He didn't stop to consider if it was his problem to solve. He didn't look around to see if someone else would step in. He simply acted with compassion. Emma gestured to Max, who remained in a perfect sit-stay, his intelligent eyes fixed on her. "Max is now a beloved member of our family, and his story has a happy ending, but there are thousands of animals in our community who aren't so fortunate. They suffer from neglect, abuse, or abandonment, and they don't all have a 2-year-old hero to save them." The chamber was silent as Emma continued, her words resonating with the assembled officials and citizens. "The proposed ordinance before you today isn't just about creating new rules or allocating funds. It's about what kind of community we want to be. Do we want to be a place where cruelty is tolerated and vulnerability is exploited? Or do we want to be a place where compassion is valued and protected?" Emma looked directly at the council members. "My son acted instinctively to protect Max because he hasn't yet learned to look away from suffering. He hasn't yet been taught that some problems are too big or too complicated to solve. Maybe, instead of teaching our children to accept the world as it is, we should be learning from them how to make it better." When Emma finished speaking, the chamber erupted in applause. One by one, other community members came forward to share their stories. Volunteers from the shelter, veterinarians who treated abused animals, rescue organizations struggling with limited resources, and ordinary citizens moved by Ethan and Max's story. Surprisingly, Tyler Matthews and 2 of his friends also approached the podium. The lanky teenager looked nervous but determined as he addressed the council. "A month ago, I was part of the problem," he admitted, his voice cracking slightly. "My friends and I were the ones tormenting that puppy in Pioneer Square. I'm not proud of that. But I'm standing here today because a little kid showed me what real courage looks like." Tyler glanced at Ethan and Emma before continuing. Since then, I've been volunteering at the county shelter, and I've seen how many animals need help. I've also seen how helping these animals has changed me and my friends. We're asking you to pass this ordinance, not just for the animals, but for the people of Portland too. Because when we protect the vulnerable, we become better ourselves. By the end of the 4-hour meeting, the council voted unanimously to pass the ordinance, with several members citing the community's overwhelming support and the personal testimonies as decisive factors. As the crowd dispersed, reporters surrounded Emma, Ethan, and Max, capturing the moment for the evening news. Rebecca Harper, who had been following the story since that first day in Pioneer Square, approached Emma with a warm smile. "You've started a movement, you know," she said, nodding toward a group of children who were asking their parents if they could pet Max. "And it's spreading beyond animal welfare. People are talking about compassion in all areas of community life." Emma watched as Ethan proudly demonstrated to the other children how Max could shake hands. "He's the one who started it," she said softly. "I'm just trying to keep up." Later that evening, as Emma tucked Ethan into bed with Max lying protectively, at the foot of the mattress, her phone buzzed with a text from Jack. "Check the Alliance's website when you have a moment. Big news." After Ethan fell asleep, Emma opened her laptop and navigated to the Northwest Animal Alliance page. There, prominently displayed on the homepage, was an announcement of their newest initiative, the Ethan Project, a program designed to bring rescue animals into schools, teaching children about compassion, responsibility, and the humane treatment of all living beings. Emma's eyes filled with tears as she read the description, which included quotes from educators, child psychologists, and animal behaviorists, all emphasizing the mutual benefits of such interactions. The pilot program would launch in Portland, with plans to expand throughout Oregon and eventually nationwide. At the bottom of the page was a professionally produced video featuring interviews with people who had been touched by Ethan's story. There were shelter volunteers, city officials, teachers, and families who had adopted rescue animals after seeing the viral photograph. The final shot was of Tyler and his friends playing with dogs at the shelter, their faces alight with a joy that seemed to surprise even them. As Emma closed her laptop, she heard a soft knock at her front door. Curious about who would visit so late, she peered through the peephole to see Jack standing on her porch, looking both excited and nervous. "Did you see it?" he asked as soon as she opened the door. Emma nodded, stepping aside to let him in. "The Ethan Project. It's amazing, Jack. I can't believe how far this has come." Jack followed her into the living room, where they sat on the couch, keeping their voices low to avoid waking Ethan. "Ryan called me right after the council meeting. They've already secured funding for the first year of the program. Schools are lining up to participate." "It's overwhelming," Emma admitted. "Sometimes I still can't believe all of this started." "Because my son didn't want a puppy to be sad." Jack's expression grew serious. "That's why it resonates with people, Emma. In a world full of complexity and compromise, Ethan's action was pure and simple. He saw suffering and tried to stop it. No calculations, no hesitation." Emma nodded, understanding what Jack meant. In the weeks since that day in Pioneer Square, she had been forced to navigate media attention, public speaking, non-profit politics, and the complexities of advocacy work. There had been moments when she questioned her place in this movement, wondering if she was the right person to carry this message forward. But then she would watch Ethan with Max, the natural, uncomplicated love between them, and remember why it all mattered. Her son had acted from his heart, and in doing so had awakened something in the hearts of others that was worth any amount of complexity or challenge. "The official launch event for the Ethan Project is next week," Jack said, interrupting her thoughts. They want you, Ethan and Max, to be there, of course, but there's something else I wanted to ask you. Emma looked up, noticing for the first time how nervous Jack seemed. What is it? Jack took a deep breath. I was wondering if you might want to go to dinner with me sometime. Not for work or the campaign, but just as us. The morning sun filtered through the curtains of the Wilson Reynolds household, casting a warm glow across the kitchen where Emma was preparing breakfast. At 40, she had a few more laugh lines around her eyes, but her face carried the contentment of someone who had found her purpose. From the backyard came the sound of barking and childish laughter, the soundtrack of their weekend mornings. "Jack, breakfast is ready," Emma called out, setting plates of pancakes on the rustic wooden table they had found at a flea market last summer. Jack appeared in the doorway, camera in hand as always. At 43, his dark hair now had distinguished touches of silver at the temples, and the success of his photography career had given him a confidence that made him even more handsome than when they had first met. "Got some great shots of the kids with the dogs," he said, kissing Emma's cheek. "Max is still so patient with the puppies." Emma smiled, remembering the skinny, frightened German Shepherd puppy from 8 years ago. Now Max was a magnificent adult dog, his coat gleaming with health, his bearing dignified as he tolerated the playful antics of their most recent foster litter, 4 mixed-breed puppies rescued from an abandoned property on the outskirts of Portland. "Where's Ethan?" she asked, glancing at the clock. Even on weekends, her 10-year-old son was usually the first one at the table when pancakes were involved. "Working on his presentation for Monday," Jack replied, setting his camera down carefully. "He wants it to be perfect." Emma nodded with understanding. Ethan's 5th grade class was participating in Compassion in Action Week, an educational program that had grown out of the Ethan Project and was now implemented in schools across all 50 states. Students were encouraged to identify a community need and develop an actionable plan to address it. Ethan, with a seriousness that sometimes surprised his parents, had chosen to focus on elderly residents whose health issues made it difficult for them to care for their pets. "Should I call him again?" Emma asked. But just then, Ethan appeared, his laptop tucked under his arm, his face serious with concentration. "Mom, can you look at my slides? I think I need to change the order," he said without preamble, his mind clearly still absorbed in his project. Emma exchanged an amused glance with Jack. Their son had grown into a thoughtful, compassionate boy with his mother's determination and his stepfather's creative eye. Though he had no memory of the incident that had changed their lives, the values it represented had been woven into the fabric of his upbringing. "After breakfast," Emma said firmly, tousling his hair, "go call your sister. She's still outside with the puppies." 5 minutes later, they were all seated around the table. Emma, Jack, Ethan, and 6-year-old Lily, who had joined their family 3 years after Emma and Jack's wedding. Max lay at Ethan's feet, his customary position during family meals, while the foster puppies were safely contained in their pen in the backyard. "Ryan called last night after you went to bed," Jack told Emma as he poured maple syrup on his pancakes. "The numbers from the national campaign are in. Shelter adoption rates up 30% in participating communities. Euthanasia rates down by almost 40%. Emma nodded, a familiar sense of awe washing over her. In the 8 years since that fateful day in Pioneer Square, the Northwest Animal Alliance had grown from a regional organization into a national leader in animal welfare advocacy. The Ethan Project, with its focus on connecting children with rescue animals, had been particularly successful, spawning numerous offshoots and inspiring similar programs around the world. "That's amazing," she said. "Did he mention the legislative package?" Jack nodded. "It passed the state senate, Oregon now has some of the strongest animal protection laws in the country. Ethan looked up from his plate, his eyes serious. My teacher says it's called the Max's Law. Is that because of our Max? Emma and Jack exchanged glances. They had always been honest with Ethan about the circumstances that had brought Max into their lives, though he had been too young to remember it himself. As he grew older, they had gradually shared more details, careful to frame the story in a way that emphasized the positive changes that had resulted without dwelling on the cruelty that had preceded them. Yes, it is, Emma said gently. Remember we told you about how you helped Max when he was a puppy? A lot of people were inspired by that, and they wanted to make sure other animals would be protected too. Ethan considered this, his gaze drifting to Max, who looked up at him with the complete devotion that had characterized their relationship from the beginning. I wish I could remember it, he said wistfully. Everyone talks about it like it was such a big deal, but I don't remember anything. You were only 2, Jack reminded him. But even though you don't remember it, what you did that day made a real difference. Sometimes the most important things we do are the ones we don't plan or even think about. We just act from our hearts. Lily, who had been quietly eating her pancakes, suddenly perked up. I want to help animals too. Can I be in a law? Emma laughed, reaching over to wipe a smudge of syrup from her daughter's chin. The important thing isn't being in a law, sweetie. It's about being kind and standing up for those who need help. You do that every day when you help with the foster puppies. After breakfast, the family scattered to their weekend activities. Jack headed to his studio to edit photos for an upcoming exhibition on urban wildlife. Lily went to a playdate with her best friend from kindergarten. Ethan settled in the living room to refine his presentation, with Max lounging nearby as a silent, supportive presence. Emma took advantage of the relative quiet to catch up on emails for the foundation. The Northwest Animal Alliance had evolved into the Wilson Reynolds Foundation for Compassionate Communities, with a broader mission that encompassed not only animal welfare, but also programs designed to foster empathy and community engagement across generations. As the executive director, Emma's days were filled with meetings, fundraising efforts, and public speaking engagements, a far cry from her former life as a struggling waitress. Her inbox contained the usual mix of grant proposals, partner updates, and media requests, but one email made her pause. The sender was Tyler Matthews, the same Tyler who, as a teenager, had been tormenting Max in Pioneer Square all those years ago. Emma, the email began, I hope this finds you and your family well. I wanted to share some news with you before we make the public announcement. Next month, we're breaking ground on the new Youth Rehabilitation Center I've been working toward for the past 3 years. As you know, the program will pair at-risk teens with rescue animals, providing both with a chance at healing and growth. I wanted to ask if you, Jack, Ethan, and of course Max, would be willing to attend the ceremony. Without your family's influence on my life, none of this would have been possible. The center will be called Second Chances, but in my heart, it will always be an extension of what began that day in Pioneer Square. Let me know what you think. With gratitude, Tyler. Emma leaned back in her chair, a lump forming in her throat. Tyler's transformation had been one of the most profound and unexpected outcomes of that day. From a troubled teenager participating in animal cruelty, he had become a dedicated advocate for both animal welfare and youth intervention programs. After completing degrees in psychology and social work, he had returned to Portland with a vision for a center that would address the roots of violence and alienation in young people through meaningful connections with animals in need. Mom? Ethan's voice broke through her thoughts. Can you come look at my presentation now? Emma closed her laptop and turned to her son with a smile. Absolutely. Show me what you've got. Ethan's presentation was impressive for a fifth grader, a thoughtful analysis of the challenges faced by elderly pet owners, particularly those with limited mobility or health issues. His proposed solution involved creating a volunteer network of students who would help with dog walking, litter box cleaning, and other routine pet care tasks that might otherwise become overwhelming. "I was thinking," Ethan said, his expression earnest, "maybe the foundation could help get it started, like a pilot program at my school, and if it works, it could expand to other schools." Emma felt a surge of pride. "That's a wonderful idea, Ethan. Why don't we set up a meeting with the Education Outreach team next week? You can present your idea to them directly." Later that afternoon, as Emma was sorting through the mountain of laundry that a family of 4 plus multiple dogs inevitably generated, her phone rang. It was Rebecca Harper, who had transitioned from local reporter to nationally recognized journalist, largely due to her in-depth coverage of the animal welfare movement that had grown from Ethan and Max's story. "Emma, I just got back from the conference in Chicago," Rebecca said without preamble. The international delegation was incredibly impressed with the Foundation's work. They're talking about implementing the Ethan Project model in schools across Europe and parts of Asia. Emma smiled, still sometimes amazed by the global reach of what had begun as a simple, spontaneous act of kindness. "That's wonderful news, Rebecca. Jack and I were just talking about how far things have come." 8 years, Rebecca mused. "Hard to believe. Listen, I'm working on a retrospective piece for the anniversary next month. Would your family be willing to do an interview? I know you're careful about Ethan's privacy, but I think it would be powerful to hear his perspective now that he's old enough to understand the impact he's had." Emma hesitated. They had always been protective of Ethan's exposure to media attention, wanting him to have as normal a childhood as possible, despite the public interest in his story. But at 10, he was becoming increasingly curious about his role in the movement that had shaped their family's life. "Let me talk to Jack and Ethan," she said finally. "It might be good for Ethan to have a chance to process all of this from his own perspective now that he's older." After saying goodbye to Rebecca, Emma stepped out onto the back porch, where Jack was photographing the foster puppies as they played. In the yard, Max was supervising from a distance, his posture alert but relaxed, the model of a well-adjusted, confident dog. "Tyler's breaking ground on his center next month," Emma told Jack, handing him a glass of iced tea. "He wants us all to be there." Jack lowered his camera, his expression thoughtful. "Amazing how things ripple outward, isn't it? That one moment in Pioneer Square is still creating waves of change." Emma nodded, leaning against his shoulder as they watched the puppies tumble over each other in a game of chase. Rebecca called about doing an anniversary piece. She wants to interview Ethan. "How do you feel about that?" Jack asked, slipping an arm around her waist. "I think maybe it's time," Emma said slowly. "He's been asking more questions lately. It might help him understand why people make such a big deal about something he doesn't even remember doing." If summoned by their conversation, Ethan came out onto the porch, Max immediately rising to join him. "Dad, can you help me add some pictures to my presentation? I need something that shows how animals help people feel better." Jack smiled. "I think I have just the thing in my archives. Come to the studio with me after dinner." As father and son discussed the presentation, Emma watched them with a full heart. Their life wasn't perfect, no life ever was, but it was rich with purpose and connection. The unexpected journey that had begun with a frightened puppy and a compassionate toddler had led them all to a place of meaning they could never have anticipated. Later that night, after the children were in bed, Emma and Jack sat on their porch swing, enjoying the peaceful sounds of their neighborhood. The foster puppies were sleeping in their pen, and Max had taken up his nighttime position in Ethan's room. "I got a call from Dr. Martinez today," Jack said, his voice quiet in the darkness. "She's retiring from veterinary practice. She asked if the foundation might be interested in taking over her clinic and turning it into a full-time resource for low-income pet owners." Emma considered the idea. That could be a perfect extension of what we're already doing, and it would address one of the root causes of abandonment: people who love their pets but can't afford their care. Jack nodded, his fingers laced with hers. "I was thinking the same thing. We could incorporate Ethan's idea about student volunteers, maybe partner with the veterinary school for staffing." As they continued to brainstorm, Emma was struck by how seamlessly their personal and professional lives had blended. What had begun as a spontaneous response to a moment of cruelty had evolved into a shared mission that engaged their talents, challenged their thinking, and connected them to a community of like-minded individuals working toward a more compassionate world. The approaching anniversary of that pivotal day in Pioneer Square had Emma reflecting on the journey, from struggling single mother to respected non-profit leader, from isolated individual to part of a movement. None of it would have happened if Ethan hadn't broken away from her at precisely that moment, if he hadn't acted on his instinctive compassion, if Jack hadn't captured the image that touched so many hearts. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Jack asked, noticing her silence. Emma smiled in the darkness. "I was just thinking about how differently things might have turned out. If I hadn't let go of Ethan's hand that day, or if we'd walked a different route." "Ah, the sliding doors of life," Jack said philosophically, "but maybe some things are meant to find their way to each other. You, Ethan, Max, me." Emma rested her head against his shoulder, grateful for the life they had built together. "Maybe so. All I know is that I wouldn't change a thing, not even the scary parts or the hard days. It all led us here." In the quiet of the night, with the weight of Jack's arm around her shoulders and the knowledge that her children were sleeping, peacefully inside, Emma felt a deep sense of rightness. The journey that had begun with a moment of spontaneous compassion had unfolded in ways she could never have imagined, touching countless lives beyond their own. Chapter 5. Full Circle. The 10th anniversary celebration of the Ethan Project took place in Pioneer Square, where it all began. The once ordinary urban plaza now featured a small dog park and a bronze sculpture of a child embracing a German Shepherd puppy with a simple plaque reading, "Compassion starts small." Emma smoothed the lapels of her blazer, trying to calm her nerves despite years of public speaking. Jack placed his hands on her shoulders reassuringly. "Everything is going to be perfect," he said. Downstairs, 12-year-old Ethan sat with Max, whose muzzle had grayed with age, but whose eyes remained bright and alert. 8-year-old Lily twirled in her new dress, excited about the day's festivities. Pioneer Square was transformed when they arrived. Colorful banners hung from buildings. Booths representing various animal welfare organizations lined the perimeter, and hundreds of people milled about with their dogs, many wearing vests identifying them as rescue animals. Ryan Anderson, now National Director of Animal Welfare Initiatives, greeted them enthusiastically. "We're expecting over 3,000 people today." As they made their way through the crowd, people stopped to greet them, many reaching down to pat Max or shake Ethan's hand. The boy handled the attention with quiet grace, staying close to Max's side. Tyler Matthews, now in his late 20s and running the successful Second Chances Rehabilitation Center, was supervising a group of teenagers setting up an interactive display. He greeted Ethan and Max warmly, introducing them to teens from his program who were training rescue dogs for therapy work. When Emma took the stage to speak, she looked out over the sea of faces, her gaze lingering on her son and the aging German shepherd who had changed their lives. 10 years ago in this very square, she began, my 2-year-old son taught us an important lesson. He showed us that compassion doesn't require special training or extraordinary resources. Sometimes it just needs us to act from our hearts when we see suffering. As Emma continued her speech, a small commotion caught her attention. A young woman at the back of the crowd was trying to make her way forward, a distressed German shepherd puppy squirming in her arms. Several people turned with annoyance at the disruption. Emma faltered, watching as history seemed to echo itself. Without prompting, Ethan rose from his seat and made his way toward the young woman, Max following faithfully at his side. The crowd parted, a hush falling over the gathering. When Ethan reached the woman, he spoke briefly, then held out his arms. She transferred the frightened puppy to him with evident relief. With gentle confidence, Ethan cradled the puppy against his chest, speaking softly into its ear. Max positioned himself protectively beside them, his presence seeming to reassure the younger dog. Emma, watching from the stage, felt tears prick her eyes at the symmetry of the moment. This is what it's all about, she concluded. Not the programs or the policies. It's about moments of connection, moments when we recognize another's suffering and choose to help. My son taught me that lesson once, and it seems he's teaching it to all of us again today. The crowd erupted in applause as Ethan, the young woman, and the 2 German shepherds made their way back toward the stage, Jack capturing the moment with his camera. Later that evening, as they drove home in the golden light of sunset, Ethan was unusually quiet, staring out the window thoughtfully. Max's head rested on his lap, the dog's eyes half closed in contentment. "Everything okay?" Emma asked, turning to look at him. Ethan nodded slowly. "I was just thinking about today. Everyone says I did something important when I was little, but I don't remember it at all." He looked down at Max, gently stroking the dog's graying muzzle. "But when I saw that girl with the scared puppy today, I didn't even think about it. I just wanted to help." Emma exchanged a glance with Jack, seeing her own emotion reflected in his eyes. "That's because compassion isn't something you do once and then you're done," she said softly. "It's a choice you make over and over again, every day." "Like muscle memory," Jack added. "The more you practice it, the more it becomes part of who you are." Ethan considered this, his hand still moving rhythmically over Max's fur. "I'm glad I didn't remember doing it before. It felt nice to choose it for myself this time." That night, after the children were asleep, Emma and Jack sat on their porch swing, sharing a bottle of wine and reflecting on the day's events. Max lay at their feet, his breathing deep and even. 10 years, Jack mused, his arm around Emma's shoulders. Hard to believe. Emma leaned into his embrace, watching the stars emerge. "My grandmother used to tell me that every act of kindness, no matter how small, changes the world. I didn't really understand what she meant until I saw Ethan with Max that day. In the quiet darkness, Max stirred in his sleep, his paws twitching as he chased dream rabbits through dream fields. Emma smiled, reaching down to gently stroke his head. "Sweet dreams, old friend," she whispered. "Sweet dreams." Dear listeners, we hope Emma and Ethan's journey has touched your hearts today. Their story reminds us that compassion doesn't require grand gestures. Sometimes the smallest actions create the most powerful ripples. If you've been moved by this tale of how one child's innocent act of kindness transformed so many lives, we invite you to share your own stories of unexpected compassion in the comments below. For more emotionally engaging narratives that celebrate the human spirit, please subscribe to our channel and click the like button. Our specially curated playlist of similar heartwarming stories is available with just one click to your left. Remember, every day brings a new opportunity to change someone's world, human or animal, with a simple act of kindness. Join us tomorrow for another unforgettable story that will remind you of the beauty in our shared humanity.